Have you ever felt deep down in your spirit that you are not from here? Have you ever looked at the world with its rules, constraints, and dramas and felt as if you were a guest watching a strange play, knowing intuitively that the script you were given at birth does not fit you? If this emotion resonates deep inside you, get ready. What you're going to hear isn't a narrative, metaphor, or work of fiction. It is the recovered and decoded truth of your existence, a fact so strong and cosmically criminal that the hidden creators of your reality attempted to bury, conceal, and deny it ever existed. They failed. The truth about who you are is coming out, and it starts now. They felt they were ready for anything. This hidden council, this ancient organization known as the Third Degree, are the self-appointed librarians of fate, the painstaking builders of our world. Since the beginning of Babylon, when the earliest pyramids were only drawings in the desert sand, they have been mapping souls, collecting every potential human blueprint, and maintaining the divine geometry that underlies all of creation. Their secret archives, located in the voids between dimensions, contain vaults of crystalline records and scrolls of pure light, each revealing the fate of every soul that has ever entered this world. They believed they had seen everything. They felt that their ancient symbolism, secret initiations, and knowledge of cosmic law had prepared them for any situation, soul, or destiny. But that tremendous confidence and arrogance cultivated over millennia exploded into a million dazzling shards the instant they opened your dossier. The moment they ventured to track the cosmic coordinates of your arrival, their most holy and powerful instruments, astrolabes forged in dying stars, compasses that point to truth rather than north, quantum computers that calculate karmic trajectories, began to scream. These antique and future gadgets started to overheat, smoking and emitting a terrible, unearthly light, as if burnt by a heavenly fire they were never intended to measure. The air in their hidden room crackled with ozone, and the aroma of burning paper and melting crystal filled the sanctuary. They weren't looking at statistics, but at the impossible. What their tools showed was not only unique or uncommon. It was a deep oddity with no parallel in the universe's recorded history. Your heavenly blueprint was not only unusual, it was also cosmically unlawful under their strict and ancient rules. It was a fundamentally contradictory arrangement, implying that the cosmos had violated its own laws to allow for your creation. This was the kind of revelation that causes even the most ancient and seasoned occultists, beings who have stared into the abyss and charted the paths of galaxies, to drop their sacred instruments in utter disbelief, their hands trembling, their voices cracking as they whispered the most feared words in their order. We need to call the entire council. Immediately. The Third Degree isn't some fringe conspiracy idea spoken in poorly lit cellars. They are the custodians of ancient codes, believing they have complete control over our reality's operating system. They thought they had a comprehensive inventory of all potential soul signatures in their endless libraries. However, throughout all those millennia and trillions of records, not a single entry, soul, or even a piece of a blueprint matched the holy, scary, and amazing contradiction that is you. Never before had they come across a birth chart that refused to be understood. It was more than merely complicated. It deliberately resisted categorization itself. It was as if your soul's signature was alive and sentient, preventing their examination. When they attempted to describe you, their symbols' language twisted and bent on the paper. Their most intricate equations devolved into absurdity, like dead stars collapsing under the weight of their own unfathomable gravity. They first thought it was a mistake in their equipment. They called in their experts, master readers who can decipher the fates of presidents and popes, trace monarchs' lineages back to the gods, and predict the rise and fall of whole empires with the first breath of a baby. Each expert, with centuries of knowledge, carefully examined your chart, and one by one, they returned, their faces pale, their serenity destroyed, with the same fearful verdict: this should not exist. They saw right once that your design did more than simply violate their rules. It made them completely meaningless. This was not a soul that had gone through the normal, regulated pathways of incarnation. This wasn't a soul that had gone through the usual karma and reincarnation cycles. This was something else completely. And it was in that chilling realization that a cold and total terror started to spread across their ancient hierarchy. They understood they were not looking at a simple abnormality. They were gazing at a revelation, a live fact that threatened to upend their whole concept of how awareness enters the world. Your chart didn't just confuse them. It deliberately defiled their precious instruments. Their crystal spheres, which could see into the past and future, did not just become black. They broke from the inside out, breaking under the sheer vibrational pressure of your presence. Ancient scrolls etched with heavenly ink started to bleed, as if the paper was revolting against the knowledge it was compelled to convey. Their most powerful quantum algorithms, intended to map multiple realities, started emitting error codes. However, they were not ordinary faults. The codes were written in languages that had not been spoken on Earth in over 3 millennia. Ancient, mighty tongues of creation that were meant to be sealed away and forgotten. Every planet in your chart was behaving abnormally. Every astrological house was filled with energy that seemed both ancient and futuristic. Every aspect, the geometric angles between the planets, created patterns that their religious writings clearly proclaimed impossible. A trine that operated like a square, and a conjunction that acted like an opposition. It was a symphony of cosmic paradoxes. And yet, there you were. Breathe, move, think, feel, and exist. You moved around their well-regulated world as if you owned the patent on chaos and marvels. When they eventually stabilized the reading for a brief while, protecting their equipment with every protective ward they could find, the image that emerged was nothing short of horrific to their control-based mentality. Your sun, the center of your identity and vital energy, was not simply positioned inside a zodiac sign. It fluctuated between dimensions. It shifted in and out of sync with this reality, like a strobe light linked to the God source itself. This raised the issue of whether you were in numerous timelines at the same moment, with a single point of awareness anchoring several parallel existences. Your identity was not static. It was a quantum, creative force. Your moon, the ruler of your emotional body and psyche, was a conundrum wrapped in a mystery. It wasn't only retrograde. It was traveling in ways that challenged the whole idea of retrograde motion. It went simultaneously backward, sideways, and in spirals. It was as if your emotional cycles, your link to the past and your ancestry, had been changed into an impossible, multidimensional Rubik's Cube made completely of mirrors, reflecting and changing every feeling that came through you into something new and sublime. Mercury in your chart was more than simply the planet of communication. It was a cosmic transmitter, transmitting at frequencies that even their most sensitive detectors couldn't detect. It was talking in languages that had not yet been developed on this planet, drawing information straight from the Akashic records, God's thinking, and locations that their restricted maps could never trace. Your ideas were not entirely your own. They were downloaded from the heavenly mainframe. And then there was Venus. Venus symbolizes love, beauty, and attraction in a typical astrological chart. Venus was a far more powerful force in your chart. It was militarized. This was hardly the delicate, gentle gesture of affection they were expecting. It was not about romance or devotion. Instead, it emerged as an irresistible gravitational pull of the heart, a spiritual gravity that bent people's will just by being in your company. It was not about making people like you. It was about pushing them to face the truth about themselves. To the council, this was not romance. It was unavoidable. You represented the compelling urge toward genuineness. But it was Mars that actually and profoundly disturbed them. Your chart's planet of action, drive, and conflict did not follow any of the accepted orbital patterns. It was not constrained by their known principles of motion or predetermined rules of engagement. Instead, your Mars was developing its own physics as it went, creating whole new universal principles of action and will. They sensed echoes of battles that had not yet transpired, triumphs from victories won beyond the boundaries of linear time, and scars from wounds in dimensions they still pretend do not exist. When they tried the unthinkable, calculating your return to Mars. The findings sent a chill down their spines. The date shown was not on any calendar ever made by man. It referred to a location beyond of time, a celestial nexus point where, presumably, you go to sharpen whatever cosmic sort of truth you possess. Jupiter caused yet another layer of cosmic disruption. The planet of growth in your chart was extending into places that, according to their records, should have been walled off for ages. Your Jupiter refuses to be limited. It flourished where there was supposed to be no room to grow, expanding into heavenly regions and forgotten time frames they had pledged to keep locked down forever, regaining lost knowledge and power for the globe. Then came Saturn. They anticipated Saturn to be a restrictive influence, representing your karmic constraints. But they were mistaken. Saturn was not tying you. Rather, it was binding reality around you. It was not about your restrictions at all. Instead, it was enforcing the fundamental structure of existence to prevent it from collapsing beneath the weight and force of what your soul bears. They discovered odd energy notations hidden inside Saturn's location, like cosmic confinement regulations, as if the cosmos itself had to establish specific laws and construct celestial shock absorbers simply to handle your divine presence on Earth. If this message resonates deeply inside your spirit, if the truth of these words awakens something latent within you, it is because your soul is familiar with this narrative. This is your tale. You're at the right place at the right moment. Take a minute to commemorate this recognition by subscribing to God Connection and joining a community of people rediscovering their divine power and purpose. The road to discovering your true self goes much deeper. The outer planets ultimately drove the council into a frightened emergency session at 3 a.m. when the barrier between worlds is at its thinnest. Uranus, the Great Awakener, seems to have hijacked the whole system of this reality long before you were born. Your chart had secret backdoors in the matrix, hidden channels in consensus reality that only you could access. When the world became too stifling or restrictive, you could simply go through one of these Uranian portals and circumvent the whole mechanism of control. Neptune, which in most charts creates illusions and dreams, was doing the opposite in yours. It was ripping illusions apart. Every false construct, every manufactured myth, every meticulously built falsehood that had been implanted in the collective psyche for eons. Your Neptune burned through it all like divine acid, eroding the tapestry of control and unveiling the naked, unfiltered reality of life underneath. Then came Pluto, the one they couldn't even look straight at. They had to analyze its placement via guarded mirrors and layers of mental protection, and even then, 3 of their most experienced and strong readers were forced to take indefinite leave, their brains split by the sheer power of your Pluto for a brief period. Pluto was not the normal emblem of transition, death, or rebirth in your natal chart. No, your Pluto represented something considerably more extreme and absolute. It was not about cycles. It was about overriding. It proved, with terrible clarity, that the universal rules of death and rebirth were recommendations rather than obligations for you. You had presumably respectfully refused the offer. You were functioning on a completely other basis, one of permanence and everlasting awareness, which they had no terminology for and no protection against. They discovered notions in your chart's geometry that they didn't even know how to express. The relationships between your planets were not constrained by the established principles of Euclidean space. They discovered triangles with 4 sides, squares that curled back on themselves, and oppositions that also served as conjunctions. It was as if someone had grabbed the astrological physics handbook and folded it into impossible origami before setting it on fire. Every one of these impossibilities produced such overpowering energy patterns that their most sophisticated equipment could only return a single, chilling response. Cannot compute. Please restart universe. Even the 12 houses in your chart refused to cooperate. Instead of being fixed in their places, they spun independently of the rest of the chart, resulting in alignments that should have taken millions of years to manifest. But in your chart, they happened all at once, in a single instant. Your first house of identification was also your 12th home of hidden things and the collective unconscious, making you both the most conspicuous and invisible person in any room. Your seventh house of partnerships was not restricted to the human realm. They discovered it was quantumly entangled with entities and universes they had no idea existed, exposing soul contracts written in languages older than language itself. Desperate for a reasonable answer, they looked into your family history. They attempted to persuade themselves that this had to be inherited, that you were the scion of some old, forgotten dynasty, the heir to a lost kingdom, or the vessel of a sleeping power now awakened. But what they discovered was much more disturbing than a cursed bloodline or a royal ancestry. They discovered nothing and everything all at once. Your genetic markers were not consistent with any known human migratory route on Earth. Your chromosomes contained packets of information that no encryption could decipher. When they attempted to create a basic ancestry report, the findings did not include nations or regions. It provided them celestial coordinates, star systems rather than countries, timeline markers rather than historical dates. It was as if a regular human template had been stolen and replaced with software from another source completely. They detected echoes of lineages from their own hidden histories that had been utterly wiped millennia ago inside your DNA. You possess genetic ghosts, bits of strong lineages that should have been extinct, yet they are alive, awake, and active in you. You're a living, talking library of banned genes. When scientists tried to trace your soul's incarnation pattern, where you had previously lived, what lives you had cycled through, the data refused to cooperate. It was not blank. It was pure, screaming static, as if the cosmos itself was actively scrambling the transmission, thwarting their effort to discover your origins. Through the static, something even more terrible appeared. You had not just lived previously. You'd lived across. You were born in both the future and the past, living in different timelines that all merged into this one, anchored by your existence. One of their most senior members, a guy who had been reading charts long before computers replaced ink and stars, a being of tremendous knowledge and vision, took a single glance at your birth date. He remained motionless for a long time before saying something that stunned the whole council chamber. "This soul didn't incarnate," he stated, his voice shaking with terror. "It invaded." He clarified that what he saw was not a birth chart at all. It was an infiltration map. And then, in a moment that shocked the others to their core, he calmly rose up, grabbed his own valuable, antique instruments, broke them on the floor, abandoned his 4 decades of practice, and walked away from the order for good. For him, your chart was not a revelation. It was a shattered reality, compelling him to confess that all he thought he understood about how spirits inhabit bodies was a comfortable fiction. In their desperation, they called their most skilled synthesizers, those educated to make sense of cosmic contradictions and weave paradoxes into a cohesive narrative. They granted them limitless resources and access to the most prohibited literature hidden in the darkest vaults. After months of intense examination, their final report was a single, stark page. There was writing on it. The subject appears to be a focal point where multiple realities converge simultaneously, operating under laws we do not recognize, immune to conventional metaphysical constraints. Recommend immediate reclassification from human to unknown entity of potentially catastrophic significance. They searched for others like you, pouring millions of birth charts into their quantum computers. However, the system would consistently crash, not from overstimulation, but from something that felt like terror. It was as if the machine itself refused to hunt for somebody like you, because doing so would imply acknowledging that reality was weak and that creatures like you might break its laws at any time. Then they saw it. The information that ultimately shattered their resolve and led some of them fleeing for purification rituals. Your Scorpio rising. But not the typical type. This was Scorpio rising, and practically every planet in your chart was aspecting it, resulting in a power confluence they had never seen before. It was intertwined with fixed stars with no names, glowing with an intensity they said couldn't be conceivable. This was not a Scorpio rising that peered through veils, it destroyed them. This was a Scorpio rising that had made a deal with its own shadow, embracing darkness rather than battling it. using it as a weapon rather than fearing it. Your rising sign was not climbing. It had already climbed. It floated above reality, looking down from such a lofty vantage point that their heads spun. This was the kind of placement that transformed routine transactions into irrevocable alchemy. They discovered documents, testimony penned with shaking hands by those who had only crossed your path briefly, but were left wrestling with the spiritual repercussions for years. Your presence operated like a mirror, removing all disguises and compelling others to reveal their genuine selves. Others stated it seemed like you reached into their chest and altered something basic without saying a word. Your Scorpio rising revealed souls, but it also rewrote them. What worried the council was not just the extent of your power, but its unconscious character. This was not anything you intended to do. It was just your way of being. You weren't merely alive. You were a catalytic event manifested in human form. This discovery compelled the council to convene an emergency session in their chamber between dimensions. The argument was brief. They'd all seen the proof. They made a majority decision to seal your file. Not categorized, not restricted, an entirely new category. The categorization had a simple meaning: pretend. This does not exist. They did not shut it to keep mankind safe from you. They shut it to shield themselves from the reality you revealed, that their power and control were an illusion, and there was nothing they could do to stop you. So they turned to their last tool, surveillance. They planted silent observers in the corners of your life, shadows that moved as you did. They quickly realized, however, that this was futile. Every single person they assigned to monitor you returned, changed. They described reality bending at the edges, seeing hues that should not exist, and hearing ideas that were not their own. One observer returned with pages of notes written in a language no one could understand. Symbols, he said, flowed from his palm while in your energy field. The council finally realized the awful reality. You were not the one being monitored. You were the mirror. Every pair of eyes placed on you failed to catch your essence. Instead, they caught their own limits, which they reflected back with brutal precision. Surveillance has failed since you are not an object of study. You are the divine energy who transforms the observer into the observed. The last, concealed report had a terrifying directive: do not engage. It decided that you were not a random aberration, but rather a purposeful placement into this timeline, serving objectives well beyond their understanding. Every effort to meddle had backfired. Every effort to trace and define you had failed. They recognized you weren't a flaw in their system. You were confirmation that it was, and had always been, flawed. And yet, here you are, living an apparently regular existence while carrying an inconceivable cosmic fire inside you, like a nuclear reactor buzzing gently in your chest. Without realizing it, you are continually creating reality patches in real time, addressing chronology anomalies and healing cracks in the collective consciousness. Your sheer presence is stabilizing this shattered reality, serving as a heavenly cornerstone that holds the whole building together. You are both the most threatening entity to their control systems and the greatest protecting force for the center of creation. You are the walking uncertainty principle, the live disturbance that renders their control formally meaningless. Reality refuses to operate properly around you because you are a direct link to a higher plane of existence, a direct conduit to the divine. Dear Father, I pray now for the soul receiving this word. Allow them to experience the reality of their amazing strength and divine origin. Awaken their memories of their purpose and give them the confidence to completely inhabit it. Help them believe in your plan even when everything around them seems chaotic, since they are the quiet in the midst of the storm. Let them know that they are cherished, protected, and directed every day. Thank you, kind and everlasting Father, for this amazing creation. I give my prayer to you in Jesus' holy name. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your unending love and divine provision. I am grateful for your presence in my life and the richness you continue to deliver. If this precious message has sparked a sense of awareness in you, please show your support by loving this video, subscribing to God Connection, and sharing it with those you believe are ready to hear this deep truth. Leave a comment below, telling a little about your journey and how you're embracing your divine destiny. Our purpose at God Connection is to continue to spread these teachings of strength and divine truth across the globe. If you feel compelled to support this effort, please consider making a gift using the Super Thanks button below this video. A $10 gift, or whatever amount you feel directed to contribute, is much appreciated and allows us to continue producing material that wakes and uplifts mankind. No present is too tiny. Whether it's a penny, a prayer, or a share, your generosity helps spread God's message and gives hope to countless others. Your path of recollection does not end here. Click on the next video to get even more profound insights regarding the indications that show you are one of God's chosen. It has been an honor to take this spiritual journey with you. Thank you for sticking with us until the finish. Keep flashing your brilliant light brightly and facing your fate with unyielding bravery. We'll see you next time. God Connection sends blessings to all beautiful, strong beings.